The U.S. Supreme Court has just torn down a central pillar of Donald Trump's presidency.
We do now have some breaking news to bring you out of the U.S. Supreme Court. It has ruled against Trump's global tariffs.
And Trump is not happy about it.
They're very unpatriotic and disloyal to our Constitution.
In Trump world, tariffs are everything.
Tariff, to me, is the most beautiful word in the dictionary.
They're how he raises revenue, how he applies pressure. Imposing them is a weapon. Removing them is a gift. But many of them rely on one very key, very simple argument, that this is an emergency.
A state of national emergency is now in place at the southern border of the U.S.
Trump is using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to back the tariffs.
Chronic trade deficits are no longer merely an economic problem, they're a national emergency.
In many cases, like with tariffs on Canada and Mexico and China and Liberation Day reciprocal tariffs on everybody, it's very helpful to be in an emergency because under most normal circumstances, the US president does not typically have the power to impose tariffs. This is plain as day, bedrock constitutional consensus, which reads, Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes and duties. Congress, not the president. To get around this, Trump often invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA, which the US Supreme Court has now dismantled in exactly 10 words. Held, as in upheld, IEPA does not authorize the president to impose tariffs. Let me show you exactly why. America hates taxes when America doesn't have a say in taxes. This is a fact that has historically driven revolutionary change. The key idea being, if the government is going to take your money, it better damn well be your elected representatives who approve it. Donald Trump fundamentally disagrees with this. So did his lawyers when they argued his case.
IEPA confers major powers to address major problems on the president, who is perhaps the most major actor in the realm of foreign affairs.
Trump avoids the lethargic machinery of Congress by saying it's an emergency. So by the powers granted under IEPA, Trump's lawyers effectively argued the president was authorized to impose tariffs of unlimited amount and duration on any product from any country. And that's not an exaggeration, because in a so-called economic emergency, like getting perennially ripped off, as Trump calls it, by other countries,
We are being ripped off by almost every single country in the world.
the president can investigate, block, regulate, direct and compel, nullify, void, prevent, or prohibit a great number of things, including any acquisition, holding, withholding, use, transfer, withdrawal, transportation, importation, or exportation of, or dealing in, or exercising any right, power, or privilege. So he can do all of these things with regard to a whole range of things affecting this massive umbrella category of any property in which any foreign country or a national thereof has any interest. But let me simplify, because among this massive buffet of options, the power of the president that matters in this case, that he may regulate the importation of basically any property. Trump's lawyers argued this includes tariffs. That's a kind of regulation, isn't it? No, it's not, says the Supreme Court. Because first of all, if the framers meant to use the word tax in the Constitution, they would have, and they do, multiple times. Tax, 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 tax.
Tariffs are taxes. They take dollars from Americans' pockets and deposit them in the U.S. Treasury. Our founders gave that taxing power to Congress alone. Yet here, the president bypassed Congress and imposed one of the largest tax increases in our lifetimes.
A tariff is a tax.
But second of all, the Supreme Court said, we refuse to believe the framers would have delegated highly consequential powers such as taxation through ambiguous language. So when the government reads IEPA to give the president power to unilaterally impose unbounded tariffs and change them at will, that just doesn't feel legitimate. And the fact that for as long as IEPA has existed, no president has ever invoked it to impose any tariff at all, never mind on the scale that Trump has? Come on, says the Supreme Court. No, just no. As clear as the Supreme Court ruling was, the question of so what now is surprisingly difficult to answer. The ruling makes illegal two specific sets of tariffs that relied on IEEPA. The first, a subset of tariffs against Canada, Mexico, and China.
U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an order to levy 25% tariffs on imports from Canada.
There will be a 25% tariff on Mexico.
And a 10% tariff on goods from China.
And then the second set are the global reciprocal tariffs announced back in April. Most every country in the world being hit with at least a 10% tariff. Trump said those two were emergency situations that only tariffs could solve. So it's easy to think, okay, the Supreme Court has ruled, those are struck down. Except
The Supreme Court did not overrule tariffs. They merely overruled a particular use of IEEPA tariffs.
on this, Trump is correct.
Donald Trump had always said when this case was going to the Supreme Court, there is going to be a plan B in case they lose.
IEEPA tariffs are only a subset of all tariffs Trump's administration has imposed so far in his second term. There are others, and the dissenting opinion on the Supreme Court makes very clear those others may become very useful. And Trump has read this dissenting opinion.
Numerous other federal statutes, which is so true, authorize the president to impose tariffs and might justify most, if not all, of the tariffs issued in this case.
And just to underline the point,
The decision came, Plan B is being rolled out.
Trump criticized the majority opinion and vowed to sign a new executive order to impose a 10% global tariff.
yes, Trump has already ordered a new 10% global tariff through a different legal avenue than IEEPA, which may wind up simply replacing the old one the Supreme Court now considers illegal.
So this global 10% tariff, the tool that Donald Trump is using, he can only impose this tariff for 150 days. There's a time limit on it. And at the end of that 150 days, Congress has to say, okay, we're going to extend this, or nah, bro, no, we're not. And in the meantime, this gives the Trump administration a whole whack of months to do investigations into different sectors to say, hey, we might want to put some tariffs on this sector over here. Oh, hey, this industry, maybe we want to do a tariff over there.
While I am sure that they did not mean to do so, the Supreme Court's decision today made a president's ability to both regulate trade and impose tariffs more powerful and more crystal clear.
The estimate I've seen most often is that the Supreme Court ruling throws into question somewhere between $140 and $175 billion in tariff revenue raised so far. Should that money be returned? Well, the ruling says those tariffs were illegal, but says nothing about reimbursing those who paid.
They don't even discuss that point. They take months and months to write an opinion. We'll end up being in court for the next 5 years.
The Supreme Court sort of punted on this. It said, we're not going to address the remedies, and we're not going to address what comes next. That's all for the lower courts.
The reality for business is going to be that we're not seeing the end of this never-ending tariff story.
Yes, this is an administration whose entire foreign policy often revolves around tariffs. Under any typical president, the Supreme Court ruling might be a kind of death blow. But under Trump, his new position appears to be, now you've made me angry.